Allahu Akbar.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Thank you, Brother Muhammad, for that and for all the previous speakers. Part of the challenge of speaking towards the end on a topic like this is you sort of, you hear a lot of great things and there's not that much to talk about. So I really don't have much to say, actually, after some of these wonderful lectures. But Dr. Hetzel, you said something very interesting about products nowadays and how they're advertised to sort of sell happiness. I think that's very interesting. Pepperidge Farms, you all are probably familiar with that little goldfish, Pepperidge Farms goldfish. You know, in the late 1990s, Pepperidge Farms was about to go bankrupt, and they were confused. They didn't know what to do. So they hired a smile psychologist. That's what they, you know, there's smile psychologists out there, and they get hired a lot for these products, because if you look in the supermarket, any product you buy that has a face on it will have a smile. There's no doubt about it. And so they hired these psychologists to figure out how we're going to put a smile on this product so it sells a lot better. So they hired a smile psychologist. And the smile psychologist, it took 8 months until I figured out, we'll just put a little line on this goldfish, put a little dot for the eye, and let's see what happens. And then after that, all they did is they put a little smile on it. That's it. And sales skyrocketed after that. Pepperidge Farms was about to go bankrupt, and basically they just pulled out this neuromarketing tactic where they're sort of, just like any other product out there that has a face, they're selling happiness. If you buy our product, don't you see how our product is happy? If you buy our product, you will be happy as well, right? And we fall for that. And I think that's very interesting, because as human beings, we're very attracted to smiles. And it's not because of the smile, it's because of the underlying message of happiness that comes behind it. Now, I want to talk a little bit just about smiles for a second, because I think it's very relevant to this topic. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the beautiful things about our beloved Prophet, one of the things that people can really buy into, if you will, about our Prophet, he was always smiling. I think some of us have a misconception of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as someone being serious and someone being very, stringent. And no, he was always smiling. There is multiple ahadith that sort of talk about this. There are narrations that talk about how he, in the middle of the battle of Uhud, one of the sahabiyat saw him smiling in the midst of arrows, and Anas bin Malik, his servant, says, "Ma hajabani Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam qat wa ma ra'ani illa dhahak." He never prohibited me from accessing him, and he never looked at me except that he was smiling, right? And he was in his sort of like environmental household. So imagine how many of us come home and we have a frown on our face, and we sort of have this exhausted, tired, frustrated disposition about our aura. But the Prophet Muhammad, his aura was very different. He was always smiling. He was always happy. He was always blissful. ما رأيت رجلا أكثر تبسما من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, as it said in the Shama'il of Imam al-Tirmidhi. One of the companions, I've never seen a person smile more than this man. I've not seen anyone smile more than this man. As a matter of fact, Aisha, she said, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بساما ضحاكا. Not only was he always smiling, he would make other people smile. You smile so much, you make other people smile. Because happiness is contagious. It's contagious. You're around someone who's happy, right? You can't help but be happy. You're around someone who's negative and pessimistic, what happens to you? You get negative and pessimistic, right? And so he had this, regardless of the situation, one time a Bedouin came and yanked a cloak off his neck and said, "Murli min malillahi alladhi indak." Give me some of that money that Allah gave you. Just like that. Walked up to him, pulled it off, just said, "Give me some of that money that Allah gave you." And what does the hadith say? فَالْتَفَطَ إِلَيْهِ فَضَحِكَ. He just turned, looked at him, and smiled. And told one of his companions, "Okay, give him some money." Right? Just like that. So easy. How did he do it? And we have this actually the Arabs at that time had a misconception about him as well. People who would hear about him, because you'd hear about these wars. You go from war to, ghazwa to a war, and so they would think this is a war prophet. This guy must be, angry. And so one of the Arabs came to Barra bin Azib one time and asked him, "Akana wajhu Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mithla as-sayf?" Was this guy's face like a sword? His face must have looked like a sword, right? Because all we hear about is these battles. And Bara bin Azib, he said, "Bal kana wajhu mithl al-qamar." His face was like the moon. Why would you describe a person's face like the moon? What would their face have to be like? It would have to be radiant. It would have to be joyful. It would have to be full of light. It would have to be blissful. It would have to have a smile on it, right? Then it would look like the moon. Then it would look like the moon. Matter of fact, the only time I can think of that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam frowned, he was rebuked in the Quran for frowning. Abasa wa tawalla an ja'ahu al-a'ma. You know the surah, you know the story, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped him and said, it's not befitting for you as a prophet. It's not befitting for you to do this, to frown like this. Right? And so he could literally produce a smile in any situation. Now, that's not easy. And people try to smile all the time when they're not happy. Right? And there was a guy, there was a famous 19th century French neurologist by the name of Guillaume Duchenne, if I'm not mistaken. He actually wanted to study smiles. And he wanted to see which smiles are real and which smiles are fake. So he studied smiles. This is what he did. He went all over the world and he studied smiles. And he said, you know what? He looked at pictures, he looked at cultures, he looked at different, he said there's 19 different types of smiles. 18 of them are fake. He said there's like the defensive smile, It's like someone's making fun of you and just sort of smile, because you don't know what to do. And it's just like, so you just smile along, and it's sort of like, there's like the anxious smile. He even described like the Pan Am smile, right? Because Pan Am Airlines had like this big, like their flight attendants had this huge smile, right? And so he said, they're all fake. They're all fake. The only smile that's real is the one that makes the muscle under your eye contract. It's the only one that's real. Allahu A'lam if he's right? But that's interesting. But if that's true, that would have been the smile of our Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what's interesting about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's smile, it wasn't just a smile on his face. His happiness was a different type of happiness. So you can have all these different sensual pleasures that put a smile on her face. But what I would argue is that the everlasting happiness is the happiness of the heart. And the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam always, he had a smile imprinted on his heart. There is a beautiful literary book written in the early 20th century in Egypt called Wahyul Qalam. It was written by a guy by the name of Mustafa al-Rafi. He was like the Ernest Hemingway of Egyptian literature at that time. And he talks about the heart smile in one of his literary passages. He says something very beautiful. He says, في جمال النفس يكون كل شيء جميلا إذ تلقي النفس عليه بألوانها فتنقلب الدار الصغيرة قصرا لأنها في سعة النفس لا في مسافتها هي وكأن الله أمر العالم ألا يعبس للقلب المبتسم. He says, when the soul is beautiful, everything becomes beautiful to it. When the soul is content, everything becomes happy to it, right? Because it receives things according to its own state, not the way things are on the outside. And so you could be living in a small shack, but if the soul is beautiful, then it becomes a castle to that individual. Because they have a beautiful insight. So he says, it's almost as if Allah has ordered the world never to frown on a heart that's always smiling, on a soul that has been purified, that is beautiful. So that was the happiness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was the happiness of the heart. He had a smile on his heart, not just on his face. And all these very sensual pleasures can put a smile on your face. Imam al-Ghazali, he has a book called Kimyat al-Sa'adat. It's actually one of the only books that I know of he wrote in his original language, Farsi. And he talks about how there is a happiness for everything about our human body. There's a happiness for the eye, which is to see something beautiful, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, we have these ad'iyah in the Quran. هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ. Oh Allah, give us from our spouses and our offspring the coolness of our eyes. There's the happiness of the ears, and that's when it hears something beautiful. There's the happiness of the limbs when it grasps something that's sensual to it. So everything about us, we have a happiness in every created aspect about us, right? But all those forms of happiness are transient. They might put a smile on your face, but that smile would be transient. He says in another one of his books, مقصد الأسنى في شرح الأسماء الله الحسنى, which is a book about the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, جلالة المريد على قدر جلالة مراده ومن همته ما يدخل في بطنه فقيمته ما يخرج منه. The value of an individual is according to what they want, what they desire. And if all what you want, if all what your happiness is confined to is that which enters into your stomach, then your value will be defined as that which leaves from it. And so there, these sensual pleasures, they're transient, and we can never get enough of them. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says that if the son of Adam had a mountain of gold, what's he going to want? He's going to want another mountain, right? The Arabs, they say, العبد حر ما قنع والحر عبد ما طمع. The slave is a free person as long as he's content. But the free person is a slave as long as they covet, as long as they want things, right? Abu Talib al-Makki says something very beautiful in one of his writings. He says, إن كنت تطلب من الدنيا ما يكفيك فأدنى فيها ما يكفيك وإن كنت تطلب ما يغنيك ولا يغنيك ما يكفيك فليس فيها ما يغنيك. If you seek from this world, from these sensual pleasures, that which is enough, you'll find that the bare minimum is enough. But if you seek that which enriches you, and that which is enough does not enrich you, nothing will ever enrich you. And so there's no end to desire for these sensual pleasures. But the happiness of the heart, which is the everlasting happiness, the happiness that puts a smile on the heart, that's different. That's different. What is that? Well, I would argue it's a few things, and some of it has already been mentioned, but one is knowledge. Knowledge of its Lord. Knowledge of its Creator. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a happiness in every single aspect of our bodies, our eyes, our ears, our hands, just like we said. But the happiness of the heart, the way He created that is to know Him. There's no greater happiness than knowing who your Lord is. Wallahi al-azim, brothers and sisters. There is nothing that will put a smile on your heart like knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And knowing what your purpose in life is. Viktor Frankl, who was a 20th century psychiatrist, you know what? He developed this thing called logotherapy, where he would have depressed patients come to him, and they would tell him, well, I'm depressed because of this, I'm depressed because of that. And what he would do is he would treat them by giving them a purpose in life. He would say, well, maybe the reason for this happening is this, or maybe the reason for that happening is that, right? And so he would give them purpose. He called that logotherapy. And by giving them purpose, he would sort of get them out of their depression. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us that in the Quran when He told us, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create the mankind and jinn except to worship me. And Imam Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he says, إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. It means إِلَّا لِيَعْلَمُونَ. It means except to know Him. That's what it means. People want to know why they're here. People want to know their purpose. One of the things you ask a patient, if they're depressed, you ask them, have you lost your sense of purpose? And if they say yes, that's a check mark on one of the, people need that. As human beings, in order to be happy, in order to be content, in order to have that smile in our, we have to know where we're going. فَأَيْنَ تَذْهَبُونَ? Where are you going? We have to know why we're here. We have to know who our Creator is, what our purpose is, what our goal in life is, what our identity is as human beings. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us that logotherapy, if you will, in the Quran. And so it's in knowing Him, it's in knowing His names. Al-Farabi, he says that, he's got a book, Darajat al-Kamal, the levels of completeness of a human being. He says everything has been created to reach a state of perfection. And when it reaches that state, it achieves happiness. When it achieves that state of perfection. Well, when we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names and attributes, and we takhalluq bi akhlaqillah, and we embody in a manner that's befitting our humanity, those names and attributes, we reach our potential as Ibn Adam. We reach our potential as human beings, our perfection of what it means to be a human being, and our ultimate happiness lies in that. And so that is one thing. Another thing that is of the happiness of the heart, which is the everlasting happiness, the thing that puts a smile on your heart is permanence. No matter how happy you are in regards to these sensual pleasures we have, the minute you remember that it's going to leave you one day, the minute you remember that you're going to die one day, that happiness starts to fade, doesn't it? It starts to go away. And so the happiness of the heart is knowing that something that makes it happy is permanent, not that it fades away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدْ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. That is that which is with you, it's going to come to an end one day. It's going to come to an end. But that which is with Allah, that lasts forever. Jibreel one time came to the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he says, أَحْبِبْ مَنْ شِئْ فَإِنَّكَ مُفَارِقُ. Love whoever you want, because one day you're going to leave them. One day you're going to be disconnected from them. So no matter how happy that relationship makes you, no matter how happy that house makes you, no matter how happy that status, that popularity makes you, it will leave you one day. And that sort of makes the heart frown. That makes the heart frown. It doesn't like that. The heart likes things that are permanent. The heart is looking for a happiness that lasts forever, as the brother said, عَطَاءً غَيْرَ مَجْذُودٍ, a gift that lasts forever. Ibrahim in the Quran, he wanted to teach his people this lesson. So he goes out as a small child, he looks up at the sky, and what does he see? He sees a nice shiny star, right? And so what does he say? هَذَا رَبِّي. This must be my Lord, because there's glitter and there's glamour, and it's high up, and it's radiant, right? But then what happens? فَلَمَّا أَفَلْ. But when it set and it went away, قَالَ لَا أُحِبُّ الْآفِلِينَ. I don't love those things that go away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never goes away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala huwa al-awwal wal-akhiru. He's the beginning, He's the first without any beginning, and He's the last without any end. And He never goes away. Imam Ghazali, he says in his Ihya Ulumuddin, لا خير في خير لا يدوم بل شر لا يدوم خير من خير لا يدوم. There's no good in a good that doesn't last forever. As a matter of fact, an evil that doesn't last forever is better than a good that doesn't last forever. Because if that good, that thing that made you happy, if it comes to an end, you'll be sad from then on. But if there was something that was bothering you, and that thing comes to an end, you'll be happy from then on. So a bad thing that comes to an end is better than a good thing that eventually ends. Right? So that's the happiness, that's what the heart is looking for. It's looking for permanence, it's looking for foreverness. And the last thing I would mention that's the ultimate happiness of the heart, which is everlasting happiness, is freedom. The heart is looking for that. It's looking for ultimate freedom. And it's interesting in the Quran, when the Quran talks about this life, it talks about hayat ad-dunya, right? Hayat ad-dunya, the life of this world. And dunya comes from adna, which means the lesser or the lower. But when it talks about the hereafter, it says, وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. The next life, that is the hayawan, which is something called sifa mubalagha of hayat. It's an exaggerated adjective of the word hayat, life. And so what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, in Arabic language, whenever you have more letters in a word, it tends to mean more meanings. Like the word Rahman, it has more letters than the word Rahim, so it has more meaning of mercy, right? And hayawan has more letters than hayat. And so what some scholars like Imam al-Zamakhshari, in this kashaf, what they would say is that means that there's more freedom. There's more movement. There's more avenues for enjoyment. There's more ways of experience in that Darul Akhirah, in the next life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the only place where He called it La Hayawan. It's a place of everlasting life. It's a place of greater dimensions of life. It's a place of greater freedom. And the heart is always looking at, it's always pursuing, always looking for freedom. So that is our pursuit, that is our everlasting happiness. It's to pursue Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, brothers and sisters, and to pursue His pleasure. And when you seek happiness, just for the sake of happiness, I'll just end with this equation. When you seek happiness, just for the sake of happiness, happiness becomes a god, and depression becomes a side effect. But when you seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just for its own sake, then Allah becomes God and happiness becomes a side effect. اللهم انفعنا بما قرأنا وجعلنا من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. السلام عليكم.